This is Tuesday, May 3rd. There are 78 days until San Diego Comic-Con 2016. Welcome to SDConCast, the official podcast of the San Diego Comic-Con unofficial blog. Good evening. I am your host, James Riley. Joining me on the podcast tonight, special guest, Jimmy J, the amazing assembly arranger.
Yeah, hey, that's I guess that's what I do. But thanks for letting me hang out with you guys tonight. I'm stoked to be with you.
Awesome. All right. So, also joining us from Parks and Cons, Sean Marshall, always around all amusement areas.
Hey guys, glad to be here. Thank you.
And joining us again this week, Robert Warners, proficiently posting pop culture pieces.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to get to all the news in a minute, but let's chat with Jimmy first. If you have any questions, you can join the Hangout and send a Q&A, or tweet us at SD_comic_con with the hashtag SDConCast, and we will get to those questions at some point during the interview. So, first off, Jimmy, when did you get started in comics retailing?
Wow, that is a funky question. It is probably early 90s. 94, I think, is our official start year. Basically, before then, I would buy and sell comics as during college. That was like my beer and pizza money fund. So I was going to the University of San Diego. And prior to that, if there was a hot book, I would, maybe would buy one or two copies, or if I was looking through back issue bins, and I would accumulate always all these books, and so it came time to sell them, and because I needed a few bucks in my pocket, so I started doing local San Diego shows, and I was really bummed out one weekend. My college main squeeze, kind of on again, off again girlfriend broke up, and so my brother, who wasn't into comics at all, not even a little bit, said, "Hey, come on, I'm going to cheer you up. I'm going to take you on a road trip. You always like going to the San Diego Comic-Con. Well, the San Diego Comic-Con isn't for a few months, but there's WonderCon actually it's in Oakland. So he goes, come on, let's do a road trip. We did a road trip, and by the time we hit Bakersfield, he convinced me that we should be comic book dealers and professional comic book dealers, and so we've been retailing ever since. And that was about 23, 24 years ago now. So 22 years, I don't know. My math,
It's been a long time.
It's a long time. So I used to have hair. I used to have a beard. I was much thinner. Yeah.
Yeah. So the history, though, is actually kind of interesting in the fact that Jimmy and his brother were doing the local San Diego shows at the same time that me and my brother were doing the local San Diego shows. And so we basically both got started at the same time, doing the same thing. And now Jimmy is where he is, and I'm where I am, and we're still doing Comic-Cons and stuff, just in totally different ways. It's really cool.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was a really cool, retailing was a really cool entry level. I mean, James, it's like I saw how close that you are to your family. For me, my partners were and remain my brother Bill and my mom Beverly, who passed away a few years ago. But it was definitely always this cool family event. And so, like in 1986 was my first Comic-Con, and she walked me up to the door. She gave me, and the story goes, she gave me $20 and said, "You got to make sure that it lasts." Okay, it's long. And here we are 20-something years later, and I'm still trying to make that buzz of Comic-Con last. And so I'm doing it any way that I can. So I love being a retailer. I promote our own brand of Comic-Cons as well. But, being a retailer is, pretty tough. I mean, especially at the San Diego Comic-Con. I don't know if it was ever easy. Maybe I'm just getting older. Maybe the market has changed, or a combination of all the above. But it's something I still really dig, and I'm very thankful that this is what I get to do for a living.
Jimmy, how long has J Company Comics been exhibiting at San Diego?
Now, '86 was my first year as a fan. It was 1996 that we had our first booth at the San Diego Comic-Con. So we bought out another local long time San Diego Comic-Con dealer, and kind of his last kind of throw-in deal in this big. Think of it this way: it's like when you're a kid trading cards, like going, okay, hey, I'm going to trade you my Wally Joyner baseball card, and you're going to give me Jose Canseco, but I have to give you, a Don Mattingly. I don't know. I'm dating myself with these old baseball references. You're making these big trades, and so when we were doing that, kind of the last kicker was, hey, and you know what? Since you're buying out all of my comics, I'm going to give you my San Diego Comic-Con booths. And, I mean, we were scared. We didn't think that we could ever be big enough to retail at the San Diego Comic-Con. But we did it anyways, and we had a blast. I mean, it was definitely high energy, a lot of people, a lot of sales, and it was adrenaline going on for, at that time, was 3 days straight. And the 3 days straight with a preview night. And it just seemed like that the convention just kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But when you're 22 years old, 23 years old, 24 years old, you're able to do that. Stay up all night sorting comics, bringing in batches of comics the next day, selling them all, doing it all again, and doing it all again, and doing it all again. So we've been exhibiting since 1996. So that makes it 21 Comic-Cons that we've been exhibitors for at the show.
Nice.
I'm not mistaken, you have more than one booth on the convention floor now, right?
Yeah, some time back when they were expanding the amount of convention halls, we put into to have an additional space. And at the time, that wasn't that big of a deal. Most people, if you wanted to buy a booth at Comic-Con, that it cost a lot of money, but you were able to. This is before, now that there's long waiting lists to get on. It's really hard to get a space. So for the last several years, we started out with a 2-booth end cap. Then we added a second 2-booth end cap. We have one interior booth that's kind of floating in the middle of that crazy sea of retailers. And in different years we've picked up other booths as well. So I mean, our approach has definitely been the Starbucks approach. Just like how there's a Starbucks on every single corner in a major city where people are walking by, we wanted to do the same approach with our booths at Comic-Con, is have them spread throughout the floor. So at one point or another, when you're walking by, we can get your attention, and hopefully with the best sellers. I mean, our goal is to always stock whatever the caramel frappuccino, whipped cream, no whipped cream. So that's what we try to do as retailers, and that's why we have multiple locations on the convention floor. So you'll see my brother Bill at one, you'll see me at one, and we draft all of our friends and family to come and work with us.
Well, that actually leads to the question, because we were wondering, in terms of the preparation, I know you and I have talked before about how much it takes of your time setting up the amazing shows and getting out to San Diego and all that, but how much time does it take for you to prepare for Comic-Con, and then what is your team? How many people do you bring out there?
Okay, ideally, this has shrunk in the last couple of years, but ideally it would take about 3 to 4 weeks of solid prep work before the con, and that is between a 3 and 4 person crew working about 12 hours a day, 12 to 15 hours a day. So, I mean, that's a crazy amount of hours concentrated in a really short period of time. Have we gotten a little bit more efficient? Absolutely. But there's also kind of that law of expanding time. If you have all year to prep for it, you're going to take all year. If you have 2 days to prep for it, you're going to take all 2 days. But usually that 3 week spot is usually where we like to be. Like in terms of our crew, like doing prep work, you will have there will probably be at least 3 or 4 of us prepping for the show. The show itself, we'll have a crew of probably about 8 to 10 people. You know, it seems like everybody is willing to work when it comes time for a free badge. Everybody's willing to work the hours of Comic-Con itself, as long as it's not doesn't interfere with getting show exclusives. But nobody likes to load the pallets up, load the trucks up, breakdowns, stick around afterwards to tear down. I mean, that seems to be always the hardest part. So, and this is, and actually, James, this is what just a few minutes ago when I was losing my brain talking about how many years you've been going as a fan and things like that. Something that I thought about and something that I've talked about with Sean before is that as a fan, you come into these conventions and it's like an amusement park. I mean, you see the DC booth, you see, the Hasbro and the Mattels and these big, monoliths and the Marvel booth and these video screens and, all these great production companies and things like that. And it almost seems like all these things are there permanently. And, you go in there as a fan, you bum rush in and, you're immersed in this for 4 and 5 days. And you don't think that, you think that it's a turnkey operation. Always on the preview nights, there will be fans that come on up to us and go, "Wow, I'm really tired, and this is just the first night." Well, it's not the first night for us. I mean, in fact, if anything, it's we're loading up our truck on Sunday, we're offloading it on the Monday of the show. Tuesday they let us onto the floor, so we start breaking down our materials and building our booths. Wednesday is, we're hustling to do that in the morning, and inevitably people want to come on up and talk to you, and they haven't seen you in a while, so it's like your time gets completely shot. So then, by Wednesday night, the Wednesday night and the Thursdays of Comic-Cons, people are expecting you to be as jacked up and on as they are, and that's not always the case. I try to bring a Monster Energy drink, or again drink some Frappuccinos, or maybe eat those expensive but really tasty Mrs. Fields cookies inside the hall to get that sugar rush. But yeah, so when you see people in like people who work inside the convention, just because it's on Wednesday night or Thursday night or Friday doesn't mean that the convention just started for them. It means that the convention is, you're in the full swing of things.
Yeah, anyone who's had any kind of setup in Comic-Con knows that it's a week-long game.
Oh, at the very least, and I mean, and I know you guys do such a great job of prepping, of doing all your prep work, your homework, finding out who has what exclusives, what's going on at the different schedules at booths. I mean, that doesn't happen just instantly. I mean, it takes work.
Yeah.
And just like in anything, just like you guys as bloggers, just as us as retailers, and if you're a fan, the more work and the more prep and everything like that you do, the more than you can get out of your Comic-Con experience. So,
exactly.
At least that's the mom lesson of today, I guess.
So, talking about comics, since that's what you do, a lot of criticism has been leveled against SDCC in recent years, that a lot of people feel that comics are underrepresented, or that they're being pushed aside in favor of TV and movies. Do you feel that that's the way, since comics are basically your life, or is it just different now? I mean, how do you feel that that's worked in the last 20 years?
You know what? I mean, I think there's some validity to both sides to both sides of the equation, and it's kind of loaded, because on one hand, would I like to see a lot more focus on comics and the books and the products that we have? Absolutely. I mean, that is, I like money. I like, I'm in business to sell the most comics. So of course, do I want to, would that raise our, absolutely. But at the same time, I think at San Diego Comic-Con, and the big change where it was, 20 years ago, it's just the bandwidth. So, I mean, where before it was very specialized. It was primarily comic books, comic book creators, comic books, comic book creators. That meant collecting back issues of comic books, and that means all things comic books. Now, because the bandwidth is so much wider of pop culture, so many things, are represented at Comic-Con, and Comic-Con means so many things to so many different people. So I think that comics, even though there's probably even more comics, arguably, at least programming and professionals and maybe publishers, there might be even more now than there was back in the day. Maybe. I mean, somebody else can give me statistics on that or not. But it's at the same time, it's like they're competing against, they're competing cast of the Avengers and Robert Downey Jr. dancing around on stage giving out roses, or they're competing against the cast of Twilight, or the spoilers with all the Game of Thrones coming out, or and I'm giving you these these examples of these big marquee things that have happened over the years. But it's like it's hard for if you're a Joe Q comic book guy, it's like how do you compete with that? And I don't know if you necessarily can, just because it's a it's a contact sport, it's eyeballs, and you're competing for I think that a lot more people notice The Walking Dead a lot more when it's the #1 rated TV show beating the NFL regularly every single Sunday, and they recognize it more at Comic-Con now than it was back when it was just an Image book over at the Image booth among 50 or 100 Image creators. So I mean, again, it's that bandwidth, it's that bandwidth question. So I think that there's so much more, there's so much more focus, there's so much more things to focus on that, even if comics is bigger, there's just so much more to see. I mean, and that's just inside the hall. I mean, we're not even talking about like how the Gaslamp District is completely, transformed, or just the amount of people that are out hanging out just in the foyer area taking pictures, and the cosplayers that can't get into the main hall but are just that are just like lounging out. I mean, it's just there's so much more. There's just so much more to see, so much more to do. So it's not a matter of one comic book panel, making and breaking, the show, and that might have been the case, 20 years ago. That might have been the case in the year, 2000, but, when, with more stuff, more movies, more toys, more exclusives, more collecting with an internet culture, that you can share all of these things. It's a festival, it's a festival, atmosphere, not unlike, like Coachella, where, you can see all these bands and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. They might play at a small, club in Los Angeles, or, at a medium-sized, arena, in a city near you. You put them all together and it's massive. And that's just, right. I mean, it's the Comic-Con effect.
Yeah, and I totally get that. I mean, we've actually counted panels in the past, and there's no lack of comic-centered programming. But like you said, there's just everything's there now. I mean, you have everything in pop culture shows up at Comic-Con now because it's where everyone goes to be seen and heard. And the people with the biggest budget to be seen and heard are the TV and movies, so they get seen and heard the most.
Or I mean, and then I always laugh because it's like because I'm old enough to remember the .com,
right.
The first one, boom and bust site. You'd see these startups that would spend like, they're a $5 million startup company, and they're spending $3 million of that on a Super Bowl ad, and you see that equivalent at Comic-Con. Who are these fly-by-night companies that are spending crazy money, on a booth or on a promotion or on, plastering their brand all over the hotels or in the Gaslamp District, and they'll, never to be heard from again. So I mean that happens too. Again, you can make arguments on both sides. What I do think is interesting, though, you will get a ton of creators still at Comic-Con. You still will get a ton of publishers that will be in the room. What you don't see as much are actually people like me, though, are people selling comic books, and there's a big reason for that. It is more and more floor space is dedicated to other things, other types of booths. There's a long waiting list to get in. It's an expensive show to be in San Diego during the peak season of the summer for about 7 nights. I mean, on average, you're talking $200, $300, $400 a room. I mean, it costs a lot of money to be there. And I mean, you'll have people who write these these long diatribes, Chuck Rosansky or whatever, saying how Comic-Con isn't profitable for them, or how big their crew is, or how tough it is, for them to to make their money back. And again, there's a lot of truth in it. It's like you have to have a bankroll. You have to have a bankroll to be able to play with, to be an exhibitor at San Diego Comic-Con. So I mean, on so many different levels, not just the amount of time and resources that it takes to set up and to dog ear and to dedicate just to San Diego, and you need a bankroll to to provide for your crew to physically be down there, but you also need the product to last to last 2, 3, 4, 5 days at the convention to really make it worth your while. And that's something that I think is often overlooked. I think anybody, I mean, you guys are badass collectors, man, and we've talked about this actually before we went on the blog. I mean, Sean Marshall, you have some great stuff. Robert's great stuff. James, I know that you're a collector from back in the day. That everybody has really cool stuff that they potentially could bring out and that people would dig and that people would want to buy. But do you have enough? Like, how's your second string? How's your third string? How's your fourth string? Do you have enough viable product to sell on Sunday when we have an hour left at Comic-Con and their last $20 burning a hole in their pocket? Do you have something to sell them? And that's a hard question. So between the length of stay, the cost of stay, how hard it is to get in, the cost of booths, that there are people like me that are vendors of comic books, is like we're a dying breed. You don't see a lot of people replacing us. When comic book vendors go away, it seems like that there is a publisher who comes in, or there is a company that is manufacturing something, or shilling something else. I mean, so it's not necessarily one comic person goes down, then a new comic person rises from the ashes in their spot. So so it definitely it definitely skews what is going on the convention floor. So sorry I know that's a long way to answer those.
All right.
But I mean that is definitely the take on it.
Cool. Hey, Jimmy, as far as like going to other cons, what would you say from a business point of view, or what is the biggest difference between exhibiting at San Diego or a smaller show like Long Beach or any other of the Southern California shows?
Well, I think that there's some degree, some things are very similar. I mean, it's like definitely the racks that we use are exactly the same. The long boxes are just as heavy to load up at San Diego as they are to Long Beach. I think the amount of people coming through the doors is a lot different. The amount of, I think, people to vendors is a lot different. So just like how I talked about how it's very difficult to be a vendor at San Diego Comic-Con, even if you are in there, it takes that bankroll. It's at a show like Long Beach or Kamikaze or many of these other regional shows, is that the playing field is a lot more even. So you don't have to go in there and be 5 days deep into great product. You might have 1 or 2 days of deep product, and that's going to be good enough. So I think that is, so I think that changes things. That makes the playing field a lot more even for the vendors in there, and does not, and it favors the little guy. And if it favors the little guy, then it becomes a buyer's market, not a seller's market. So a show like these small cute shows like Long Beach that you could get in, if you're a fan, you can get in and get out of there within 3 hours, 4 hours, see the couple of creators that you want to see, go shopping at a couple of places, and then the nice thing about places like that, if you're a consumer, is that those are great shows to buy at, because it's a very competitive atmosphere. The vendors need to are more dependent on your particular sale. I'm going to flip side it at San Diego Comic-Con. There might be a dude that comes on up to our tables and wants to play hardball negotiation, and at the San Diego Comic-Con, there's just not enough hours, there's not enough time, and there's two guys standing behind that person that want to actively buy something. So it's not a matter of necessarily sitting there and bartering over a few dollars. It's a matter that we're set up. These are the prices. This is what we're selling, and either you want it or you don't want it. And if not, for good or for bad, you can move on out to the next table. You can move on out to the next booth. Or you know what? You might on the flip side of that, you might decide instead of spending your money at the J Company table, you might stand in line for the Sons of Anarchy cast where they give you a free T-shirt, but you wait 6 hours to do it. So I mean, there's trade-offs with time as well, but I think that's the big difference between small shows and regional shows, local shows, and the big the big Super Bowl of comics, which is Comic-Con. Just the size and scale and your expectations as well.
Well, speaking of those other conventions, you run some very cool conventions yourself with Amazing Comic-Con, and you focused in on, as you call it, the architects of pop culture, which I know we love covering and checking out and everything. So to tell people, though, how did you decide to get into that business of having your own set of conventions, and when did you decide that?
I told you earlier how my brother and I came up with a stupid idea of how to sell comic books at comic book conventions and do that for a living. It was almost as impulsive that we decided to become comic book convention promoters and organizers. And I say that jokingly, but at the time, it's like we saw this big shift happening, not just at the San Diego Comic-Con, but there's all these smaller regional shows that want to be the San Diego Comic-Con, and they're not going to be. But they decided that their focus was going to be these other shows, and we were vendors we'd travel to, and we'd pay thousands of dollars to be there for 3 days and 2 days and 4 days and things like that. That we would pay this great big money, and the fans were coming in, and they were there to see nostalgia actors, and they were there to see wrestlers, and they were there to see old TV stars or reality contestants or maybe current TV stars. And that's just what the fans were into, that's what they were attracting, and that's what they were selling. And my brother and I, we every show we'd come on home and be like, man, back in the day, I remember standing in line for Jim Lee in the Wildstorm crew, and I remember going to the Marvel booth and getting all my Marvel books signed, and I remember at DC they would be doing sketches at their booth, and this was cool, and this is what we liked. And those were the things that really got us into Comic-Con. I mean, again, I mentioned 1986, my first year out in the 90s. We would go on out there, and we're just gung-ho about things, man. And we loved it. We loved getting, carrying really heavy bags of getting all of our books that we own signed and meeting all the creators. And we love that hands-on, approach with the comic book creators and the people that started it all. So I think that after enough time that we said, hey, if we had our own show, this is exactly what we would do, and this is what we would do under this circumstance. It became time to put our money where our mouth was. And so we saw it opening in a field in outside of Phoenix, Arizona. We saw it, we took it, we scraped together the few dollars that we had, just like we did when we started our retail business. We went to Mom and said, hey, Mom, we're going to jump in. Can we have this loan? And it was $300. And I thought that was the most money that I could think of at the time. Well, this, my brother and I scraped together, the few thousands of dollars we had in savings and put it on. And we called in all friends and family. So our year at the Amazing Arizona Comic-Con in Mesa, so it's like a few minutes outside of Phoenix. We had Robert Kirkman, which was great. He was just starting this TV show called The Walking Dead. I was buddies with Rob Liefeld for a really long time, so he was one of the first calls that I made. Jeff Loeb, so he is the big key guy with all the Marvel TV and the Netflix. He's the executive producer of all of those shows. But right before he was doing that, he was a comic book writer, friend of the family, and knew for a lot of years. So again, we were calling in all these favors, and so so then what we decided that at the events that we organized, we were going to put the comic creators on the marquee. So it wasn't a matter of shoving them down or discarding them or putting them in the back of the room, or you have to go spelunking along their websites to find these names of these creators of your favorite books. That's what we decided to focus on. And just like at J Company Comics, focus on modern comic books. I mean, that's what we know. It's a more narrow field than getting into toys and getting into statues and getting into all this cool stuff that I'm a fan of, but I just know I couldn't retail at. Well, our approach to the Comic-Cons were very similar in that, what we know are comic books. And what we know is what we dig in pop culture. And we noticed more and more that the pop culture that we were consuming, meaning the movies that we went to, the TV shows that we watched, the toys that we were collecting, the video games that we were playing, the gear that we saw at places like Hot Topic and even Target were all influenced by these great comic book creators. So we decided to shift gears and counter-program. While everybody was trying to become the next San Diego Comic-Con, we were trying to become San Diego Comic-Con, the San Diego Comic-Con that we enjoyed. And so that is our brand at the Amazing Comic Conventions. So again, that's where you get the architects of pop culture. These are the guys that started it all. I know that you guys are all big Disney fans, and you guys make it a point to go to Disneyland a whole bunch. Wouldn't it be cool?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, no, which is awesome. So I'm going to use an analogy. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to go to Disneyland, get in that hot tub time machine, and go there with Walt Disney? That would be amazing. Well, that's all about going to our comic book conventions, is that you are seeing the people that created all these iconic, these iconic characters and things like that you're getting to experience comic books alongside them, rather than seeing the watered down byproduct. So so that's our goal. We started out at Arizona, so that show has been going on we completed our 6th year, so we're planning already year number 7. We are getting ready for Amazing Hawaii Comic-Con in just a few weeks, which is always a favorite. We're going on to our 2nd year. I mean, who wouldn't want to be in Comic-Con in paradise, right?
Yeah, I sense the pattern in the branching out here of maybe getting to the vacation spots more than the convention spots.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. It becomes an easier, a more attraction, for creators. So I mean, without a doubt, it is easier inevitably to get people to come to places like the Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con and the Amazing Hawaii Comic-Con, as opposed to the Amazing Houston Comic-Con or the Amazing, Arizona Comic-Con. Arizona, I mean, these are great communities. Houston, awesome community, great. It's big. It's badass. But in terms of attracting creators, these other shows definitely help out, because it's like, if you want to come on out to Las Vegas, you got to make a couple other tour stops as well. And we've been really successful with attracting the best of the best. And these are people that we enjoy as fans. As retailers, we know that people ask for these, comics and artwork and stories by these creators. So I mean, that's where we're wired in. So
very cool. I think you actually answered like 2 of our next few questions. So I guess really just.
I have stories. I kind of.
It was good.
What? I mean, you basically answered the question of how you set yourself apart. You basically become, like I said, the architects of pop culture. But how do you like, in a business sense, how do you make sure that you are found? How do you get the word out in what is now basically a 5 conventions every weekend type of schedule?
No, you know what? I think that is actually a great question, because is the reality of it is the worst rated television show that you could think of is they're still going to draw on network television, are still going to draw more eyeballs than the highest selling comic book. I mean, which is just, it's a shame. But then in retrospect, those great comic books that and love, they plant the seeds for stuff that can go on and to grow and be stronger. The reason why I mention that is that naturally there could be some television show that I'm not into that the stars, might generate more eyeballs than than the creators that we bring in. So how do we fight? How do we fight? How do we scrap? How do we market this? Well, I think a lot has to go with our message and our brand, and getting out the people that really care about the same values of the convention that we value. We value the creators, so hopefully we get more people that value the creator. I also think that there's education plays a really big part in our approach. Is that I think that you learn something new if you come on out to the Amazing Comic Conventions. With the panels that we bring out, with the creators that we bring out, that you get a sense of why these creators are important and why we're bringing them in, to a show, to a convention right at this time. I'll give you an example. We were at the Amazing Arizona Comic-Con in February, and it was the same weekend as the Deadpool movie came out. And I know, Robert, you were able to come on out. We were able to do a Deadpool screening, and it was a whole lot of fun. So it was really cool that you got to see the creator, the guy who actually made Deadpool, right? He speaks about it with, at a panel. After hours, we all go to the movie theater a few blocks away. We get to see this great finished product, which is fantastic. And then the next day, there's signings and other cool events that tie into this. And that's just one example. I mean, we've done this with The Walking Dead, at our upcoming with Walking Dead and Robert Kirkman. An example of that is going to take place at the next show that we do, which is Amazing Hawaii Comic-Con. We have there's a TV show, horror drama that Robert Kirkman created. It's called Outcast. It's going to be on Cinemax. It's going to come out in June. But our event takes place in May, and so we're getting an early screening of that. So again, you get to watch the show before everybody else does, and you get an introduction to the show by the guy who actually creates it, Robert Kirkman, who is like the #1 TV producer, working in Hollywood, who happens to be this huge comic book fan, and this huge comic book creator. So I mean, these are things that we try to do. We try to spotlight these creators and really use that to set us apart. So we get emails, we get Facebook messages going, hey, so which, Hollywood starlets are you going to get? Who is available for photo ops? And, in general, that's not really the vibe of our shows. And there's a lot of great events out there that you can stand in line and give $100 out and take, your cool Facebook photos out there for, and that's awesome. I mean, and I don't knock any of those because, I've done those photo ops too. And they're a lot of fun, and it's fun to show your friends and things like that. It's just our events are different, So I mean, they're built different, they're executed different, and hopefully there's an audience for them, and hopefully we get a great crowd coming back, year after year.
All right. Well, speaking of, how do people find your conventions? Where are you at online? Where can they go to find out about them? Okay.
Well, I shill nonstop on Twitter. So that is at Amazing Comic Con. So there's no funky spellings on it. It's all spelled out, Amazing Comic Con. There's no hyphens. Don't worry about it. It's at Amazing Comic Con. And that's where you will find out about all of our shows that we do. Now, in terms of our website, it's really cool, really easy, all spelled out. AmazingHawaiiComicCon.com, AmazingLasVegasComicCon.com, AmazingHoustonComicCon.com, AmazingArizonaComicCon.com. So everything is all spelled out. Because, I mean, again, why do I want to confuse people, with is it one C's or two C's? Is there a hyphen? Is there not a hyphen? So we want to make it as easy as possible. And so, I mean, you can find us there. And then also we have Facebook pages set up for each of our events, too. So, I mean, those are some way to find out about the events that we throw, and hopefully some cool stuff coming to an area near you that you could, either jump into a car and make a great road trip out of it, or
right at the end.
These are regional shows. back when I was selling, back as a retailer, I would love if everybody collected, back issues and stories and things like that. I think that with Comic-Con culture now changing and the shift is that I think people now collect experiences. And they want to share it with their friends. And they want to post a picture of it. They want to put it on social media. But I think it's creating these experiences. Is what we're what we try to really go for. And so whether it's something where you go to with your friends and you meet a cool comic creator, or whether you're checking a Comic-Con out with your family, for the first time, again, we try to create these experiences that you'll remember year in and year out, and hopefully that's where your attachment will be. Hopefully you'll learn something new and can appreciate pop culture a little bit more with the vibe that we're given.
That's awesome. Yeah, so anyone interested in conventions like that, then definitely check them out. I know Sean and Robert have been to a few over the years now, and they rave about them. So.
Well, I think Sean likes. I think Sean likes that he could go to the poker room at the Las Vegas. So that's an added incentive there.
Right. No, you're right though. I mean, the education components. I mean, it's really cool. Your shows always have whatever is kind of hot in pop culture, the roots of it there, and that's always really appreciated and very cool. To whatever Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out, and you've got the people there that bring those ideas in the first place. So yeah, it's great.
The Guardians, that was like my favorite lineup that we put together. Because again, my brother looked at me and was like, "You're crazy. You think this Guardian is going to be big?" And I'm like, "Yes, it's got a raccoon that like fires a gun and talks smack." And I go, "So why don't we bring all these why don't we bring out all these cool Guardians of the Galaxy creators from all the different years and put them up on stage together, and and see how they vibe." And okay, so John, I dig that you recognize what we're trying to do, and and that's
totally.
Again, our approach to retail when you see us at the San Diego Comic-Con is try to center in on all these cool aspects of pop culture and all these key moments and these key back issues and these key trade paperbacks and things like that. So when we try to emphasize that as retailers at the at places like the San Diego Comic-Con, but we also practice what we preach as well and try to put it on a different scale, something that we can control while we promote our events like the amazing Comic-Cons.
Totally.
All right. So, Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us today. Can't wait to see you at the show this year because we stop by every year and say hi.
Absolutely.
And we're going to, what we're going to do next is we're going to do the news. So you can drop out now. You can hang out and listen to us chat. Whatever you want to do is good.
I'm gonna tune into the show. I'm gonna multitask and do a whole bunch of stuff during it. But I dig what you're doing, and I really appreciate that you gave me this opportunity to be a part of your all this cool fun stuff that you guys are putting together. Anything that you guys need in terms of a retailer background, retailer take on things, whether it's as a show promoter. Anyways, I love to be involved with you guys. You guys are a really top source for me over the years. Following you guys out on Twitter has been actually amazing because that is like my cliff notes to everything going on at the San Diego Comic-Con. No joke. I really appreciate what you guys do. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
thanks, guys.
You had a show.
Thank you.
All right. That was awesome. That guy knows a lot, and he's been around for a lot of years.
Definitely.
All right, so we're going to get into news now, and there was actually a decent amount of news this week. I guess May is actually kicking it up like we're supposed to, but the last week in April really helped. So the first thing is actually today, emails started going out from Comic-Con HQ with the access code, which is going to be usable starting Free Comic Book Day this Saturday, May 7th. What is new on that email, that if you already signed up to be notified, is that you can actually win a trip to Comic-Con this year. There were no other details except for a line that you can win a trip, and I'm assuming that the details will be available on May 7th when you do sign up. So you go to comicconhq.com. I think it's comic-con, speaking of dashes. And you sign up to be notified, and what they'll do is they'll email you the code, and then on Saturday, anytime in that first week, if you sign up for the beta, you will be entered in to win a trip to SDCC 2016, and also you will have access to ComicCon HQ for free all the way through this year's Comic-Con, which the free access ends on July 25th. So if you want to find out everything about Comic-Con, find out what's going on their side of it, and see some of the shows that they're doing and all of that, ComicCon HQ is going to do some stuff, especially at the event they're doing like 24-hour coverage of some kind, they say in the email. What I want to point out, though, and this is something that a lot of people are, like when we search the tags on Twitter and such, a lot of people are getting slightly wrong, is a lot of people are assuming that when ComicCon HQ mentions programming from Comic-Con and we're doing live programming for 24 hours a day, a lot of people think that that is live streaming of the panels, and that is not the case. There is no live streaming of panels allowed. They don't let people Periscope or anything. What it is ComicCon HQ will have their own booth. I think it's outside the convention center, where they will be doing programming themselves, and that's what they will be broadcasting 24/7. The panels themselves that they're going to be broadcasting are at a later date. So if a panel is on Saturday at Comic-Con, we don't know what later date means. It may be 3 days later, it may be a week later, it may be 3 months later. We don't know yet. All we know is that it will be later. It will not be live. So panels are still for the attendees only. So Robert, why don't you handle the next one?
Yeah, sure. So Ace Parking, the parking lottery has gone underway. It opened up for Group 1 on Monday, and it ends on Friday for Group 1, and then Group 2 is next Monday, Group 3 is the following Monday, and so on. But the update right now is that the parking at the convention center for Sunday is already sold out. And James, I think you had a theory on why that was the first one to sell out.
I mean, it seems weird that it was Sunday would sell out first, because Sunday never sells out first at Comic-Con. Tickets sell out last for Sunday. So my theory is that it's possible that retailers are buying extra spaces to help with close down and to get out of there quicker. So they might buy an extra space or two to get a vehicle in underneath, because I mean, when I was a vendor there 20 years ago, that's what I did. I parked underneath and loaded up and got out of there instead of dealing with the loading dock in the back that you had to wait in a long line for. So
yeah, I think you're totally right on that, because all the vendors that we know, they talk about the importance of Sunday and getting as many cars as possible there and getting as I mean, that was one of the things that we've talked with Jimmy about. I mean, that's just like an all-night process getting out of there, as much as it is to load in, and everybody's tired. And so, yeah, I think you're exactly right in that.
And so they probably bought their allotted amount that they have as exhibitor parking, and then put a bunch of emails in to try and get it in the regular parking. So, you know, it's just the way it is. Comic-Con on Sunday is get out day.
Right.
So that's all. That's really the only news there. Group 1 is still going, right, Robert? When does that?
Group 1, the last day to purchase for Group 1 is this Friday, the 6th.
And then Group 2 will be next Monday starting.
Yep.
All right. So also this week was the final wave of special guests. Normally we don't mention these except for the 15th and final wave. Saved a few biggies for last, including Stan Lee himself is a special guest again this year. Scott Shaw, who is, I think, someone who has been to every single Comic-Con, is a special guest again this year. And William Gibson is going to be a special guest, which I'm not sure. I didn't have time to look and see when the last time he came to Comic-Con or if he ever has, but that's a pretty cool thing that William Gibson is showing up. And obviously these guys are most likely going to get spotlight panels. Most special guests get a spotlight sometime during the conventions, so you will be able to see a panel with just William Gibson, with just Stan Lee, and all of the other special guests. They will most likely be getting their own panel during the show.
All right, and then the news broke earlier this week from The Wrap that Fox is potentially not attending well, not having any Hall H panels this year due to piracy of their trailers. However, it could be something as simple as like they might not have really anything to show right now. They don't really have too many movies in production besides Assassin's Creed and Trolls. But those might be brought from Ubisoft does Assassin's Creed the video game series. Maybe they'll have some footage from the film, so it doesn't necessarily have to come from Fox. But it's interesting that Fox might not be attending, but it's not the first time a studio hasn't attended ComicCon
Right.
or had a Hall H panel.
And how many of us believe that the leaked footage is the real and actual and 100% true reason why they're not coming to Hall H this year?
Not at all.
No. It's an easy excuse because it's one that places the blame elsewhere, and marketing people love to place the blame elsewhere for things. And honestly, I think that's what it is. I think that they didn't want to basically say we don't really have anything or enough something to show, so we're not going to show up. So pushing the blame elsewhere makes them look good, saying, hey, we wanted to come, but you guys, and this is the really sad part, which my wife pointed out, is they're basically saying, hey, you, the fans of our stuff, you guys kind of suck by showing the footage, so we're taking our toys and going home. And the thing is that it's the fans that are the ones that are making them the money, that are giving them all the publicity. So why are they blaming us for something that we're doing that helps them? I mean, don't you think that last year's leaked footage of Deadpool and Suicide Squad only enhanced the reputation of those movies and made people want to see them more? Did it hurt in any way? I mean, the only valid argument you can say is that early footage, when it's incomplete, doesn't look as good as it can, but I don't know if that has ever stopped me from being interested in a project just because there's maybe some temp music or something, or some unfinished special effects. That has never stopped me from being interested in a movie.
Comic-Con even put out a statement shortly after that news broke that they're working with these television networks and movie studios and doing their best to prevent these leaks from happening.
Right. And the thing is it's still not official that Fox isn't coming because they haven't actually made an announcement yet. It's just a rumor.
Exactly.
And a statement from Comic-Con basically saying all this, it's basically, it was about the piracy, not about whether or not Fox was going to show up. So we still don't know if they're going to show up, but generally something like this is, it's probably true because not every studio comes to Comic-Con every year. Disney hasn't shown up in a few years. Marvel skips every other year when they go to D23, even though they're not going to say that that's why they're skipping. Everybody knows it is. So we all know what's happening, people. It's not the piracy that's the problem.
No, and I think we know this over and over again of the great challenge it is for being at Comic-Con in terms of everything from getting the actors out there, getting the talent, deciding the footage, and it always bears the question of what kind of bang for your buck do you get. And we've seen obviously Disney do a lot of different things with go ahead and doing their own events or things like that, and it seems odd because you would think that Fox would want to do a little bit of a victory lap with Deadpool and Deadpool 2 and just throwing an actor out on the stage and saying this is going to be cable or something like that would set people on fire. But it may just be a question of feeling, does it really bring that much? I mean, obviously they're still dealing with all of the complaints about how Apocalypse looked last year all the way up until now in terms of the effects not being finished and people with that. So it may be a situation where they just want to take a year off and see how they can market things in other ways and play it by ear for the following year.
Yeah, and I think this might lead into how because every few years there's like a shift in how the Hall H panels are handled, and for the last few years it's been like let's bring that exclusive footage that just blows everyone away with Godzilla, the surprise teaser of that, and just all the cool footage. But last year Star Wars didn't bring anything new except for some behind the scenes footage.
Yep.
And then they took us to a concert, and I think that may be the shift we see in the coming years, where as Jimmy pointed out, that people are now looking for experiences. And now the Hall H panels may provide more of an experience than the actual footage itself if the studios really do care that their footage is leaking or that they don't want unfinished stuff out there. You may see more stuff like when the walls slide out and you get that immersive experience of what's going on with the WB panel, or going to a concert, or having the concert happen inside like it's happened a couple of times. I think Tenacious D did it about 5 or 6 years ago. They actually held a concert. So, I mean, those experiences may end up being what now blows people's minds in Hall H instead of the footage or in addition to the footage, because honestly, for Hall H, I mean, it just has to keep getting bigger, it seems.
All right.
So what else is in the news, Sean?
All right, so Square Enix, we're obviously getting into convention exclusive season, so over the next several weeks we'll be getting all sorts of info from Hasbro and Mattel and everywhere else, but Square Enix is out. They have a new Batman versus Superman Batman figure from the Kai Arts line. And so, real quick from their description, from recreating the likeness of his face to the texture of his body and suit, there are fine details incorporated within the simplicity and the paintwork, making the care that was put into the sculpting side, of course. We can't forget the various signature gadgets that Batman carries in his arsenal. This figure excludes the image of a dark hero stands against the light. And so yeah, if you're into that line, it is a really cool figure. That's personally a booth that we've never really gone after anything there, although we have some friends that are very passionate about that booth. In general, I guess with exclusives, our dog's going crazy there.
Well,
in general,
we have to have some dogs around.
Yeah, there you go.
Some dogs.
I was gonna say one of the things with exclusives in general this year, with kind of getting ready for that, we always do different guides and stuff like that on the website and visual guides and Hasbro, Mattel, and all that. But one of the things I've put out is just if there's booths particularly that people are interested in that maybe we've not done in the past, to let us know, and we'll see what we can do in terms of putting together guides and things like that. Because I personally try to stick with things that I know well, but we can always get other people's help, or maybe Robert has particular experience with it, or we can outsource and get help. But point being is we can find the help out there. So
right, exactly. Yeah, anything that you guys want us to do, Sean's your man. Sean will get it done, because I don't want to do that work.
Yeah.
All right. So the final thing in the news was this wasn't really a whole lot of news. It was just an article we posted. Curio & Company is doing a Kickstarter. They've been in small press for a few years now at Comic-Con, and Carrie wrote a really nice article delving into what it's like as a small press vendor at Comic-Con, what it takes to get there, and all that. And we'll put it in the show notes if you want to go and give it a read. It's some really cool stuff. She also posted, well, I posted, but she wrote it because Carrie writes like 99% of what goes on the site right now. But what to expect for May, and we've already, like I said, the news started increasing already, which is what we expected in May. There's parking, exclusives, but we'll put this in the show notes as well, but there's a what to expect in May coming article. So go ahead and check that out when you get a chance.
Cool, and then don't forget that we have the Enchantment under the SDCC Party. It's back at Henry's Pub this year during preview nights. Big difference, it's no tickets, it's free, however you buy your own booze, but we'll have lots of goodies and sunglasses. It's going to be really sunny, and we're going to have plenty of sunglasses.
This week, we're actually getting more people saying that they're going to be giving stuff to us to hand out to everyone, and it's really cool. Once we have more details finalized, we'll be able to announce it, but I think that everyone who attends this year will be very happy. So it's really cool, and we really appreciate all of the vendors and manufacturers who are so generous in giving stuff to us to give to you.
Definitely.
So don't forget, thankfully, Carrie is back next week. She is enjoying New York right now, and we don't want to bother her, but it will be very, very good when she's back, because we all know it's Carrie. Next week, we haven't. Do we have a guest lined up? No, we don't. So you may have to listen to us talk more. But we'll go on about what news is out there and anything else that has happened, which, based on what's happened this week so far, we can expect even more news to be breaking as we go.
Cool. And we'll also be teaming up with Uber for $20 off your first ride during Comic-Con. Just use the code SDCCUblog.
All right, and sign up for our newsletter. The link is in the show notes. Lots of other news on the site. Robert is writing their Under the Tents column and getting it out at least once a week right now, and I think it's going to have to start increasing this week.
Oh, yeah.
time to get started on the next one, and we just posted one today, so yeah, it's starting. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Jimmy from Amazing Comic-Con, for joining us for the interview. We hope you join us every week as we bring you news and opinions and special guests all the way up to Comic-Con 2016. Robert, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Legion of Sands and legionofsand.com. Sean, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
You can find us at parksandcons.com and across all the social media at Parks and Cons, and our YouTube channel, Parks and Cons, all of them pretty easy to find. We do a weekly talk show there on conventions and parks, and it alternates, so check it out if you're interested in conventions or park stuff. And James, where can we find you?
I am everywhere on the internet at Dan Riegel, Flickr, Twitter, everywhere. You can also check out geekshotphoto.com for photos that my wife and I take. And we are on iTunes. If you'd like to subscribe, the links are up on the blog, or search for SDConCast. If you like what you've heard, please review us. We are also on Stitcher Radio. The link is in the show notes. If you want to get a hold of us, you can send us an email at sdcomiccon.blog@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/sdconblog, or tweet us at sd_comic_con. Thank you all for listening, and everybody, Go
shawarma.
Shawarma.
End it. How do you end? Stop.